Subscribe for more.
I never thought a friendship could quietly unravel everything I thought I knew about trust. My name is Callum. I'm 34, and I've been with Jordan for 6 years. We met in college, the kind of romance that felt natural, effortless. We laughed a lot, argued a little, and always found a way back to each other. From the outside, we looked like the perfect couple, friends, partners, confidants. But as time went on, I began noticing subtle shifts, ones I didn't know how to name at first. Jordan had always been close with her best friend, Elliot. They met in their freshman year, and since then, they were inseparable. I knew them both well, met him countless times, and even considered him part of our extended social circle. But as our relationship deepened, I started sensing this unspoken tension whenever he was around. It wasn't overt flirting. It wasn't disrespect. It was something I couldn't put my finger on. The way she laughed at his jokes a fraction too long. The way her eyes lingered a second too long when he brushed past her. I tried to brush it off, to convince myself I was imagining things. Maybe I was just overthinking. For a while, I did nothing. I focused on work, tried to keep myself busy, and reminded myself that I trusted her. But the more time went on, the more I noticed how our interactions changed after he was involved. Sometimes I would make a joke, and she'd respond with polite laughter, distracted. Sometimes she'd cancel plans with me, claiming errands or errands for family, only to post online photos with him later. The subtlety of it gnawed at me more than any blatant betrayal could have. One evening, after she had gone out to study with Elliot, I found myself scrolling through old messages she had left open on her laptop. I know, it wasn't right, but I couldn't help it. There were texts, innocuous on the surface, but the intimacy was unmistakable. Inside jokes, emojis, playful teasing that once belonged to just us. My chest tightened as I realized that part of my world, the part that belonged to us, was being shared with someone else. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I reflected, strategized, and finally made a decision that would change everything. I needed balance. If she could have a male best friend who shared her laughter and her attention, I needed a female counterpart, someone to occupy the same space she had allowed Elliot to fill. I didn't do it out of spite at first. I did it out of clarity, a way to protect my emotional space, to reclaim the balance I felt slipping. Her reaction was subtle at first. I introduced Serafina into my life. She was witty, intelligent, and shared my interests. We started meeting casually, attending coffee shops, studying art exhibits together, nothing overt. But it didn't take long for the tension to become palpable. Jordan noticed. She tried not to, but I could see it in her expression. A raised eyebrow here, a clipped tone there. The effortless comfort she had displayed with Elliot was now replaced by something cautious, hesitant. One night, we all ended up at the same party. The dynamics had shifted in ways I wasn't fully prepared for. She didn't speak much to me that night, choosing instead to engage with Elliot in a way that drew my eyes, pulled at my patience. Serafina, ever composed, stayed by my side, offering subtle reassurance without needing to compete for attention. And that was when it hit me. The discomfort I felt wasn't just hers, it was mine too. Seeing her with Elliot, seeing myself with Serafina, it wasn't jealousy in the simple sense. It was a recognition of what had already been unbalanced for months, a silent acknowledgement that our relationship had begun to fracture long before this experiment. I decided to address it head-on, not in anger, but with careful words, measured tone. I asked Jordan to sit down with me in the living room, away from distractions. She hesitated, clearly aware of the tension, aware that what I was about to say mattered more than she anticipated. I spoke slowly, carefully choosing words that reflected my experience without accusation. "I've noticed the dynamic between you and Elliot," I said. Her lips pressed together, but she didn't interrupt. "It's made me uncomfortable. I feel secondary in my own relationships sometimes. That's not about control or jealousy in the petty sense. It's about balance. Attention, intimacy, emotional investment. I need clarity, Jordan." She looked down, her fingers fidgeting. "Callum, it's not what you think. Elliot is just my friend. Always has been. I understand that," I replied calmly, "and I don't want to take that away from you. But I also realize that I need the same consideration. That's why Serafina has been part of my life lately. I'm not trying to provoke you. I'm trying to restore balance, to make visible what's invisible in our day-to-day. There was silence for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised me, something raw. I didn't realize I was giving you so little. I thought I was just being normal. I know, I said softly. Normal isn't enough anymore. It's about presence, attention, partnership. I can't feel like a spectator while you invest in someone else emotionally, even if it's just friendship. And it's not just about Elliot or Serafina. It's about us and what we've allowed to erode quietly over the past months. She looked at me with wide eyes, and for a second, I thought we might reach understanding. But the unease didn't fully disappear. Over the next few weeks, things shifted. She began noticing boundaries she hadn't acknowledged before. Our conversations became more intentional, more present. I realized that introducing Serafina wasn't about creating discomfort. It was about making the invisible visible, about showing Jordan that the emotional economy of our relationship needed accountability. I won't lie, there were awkward moments. There were nights where I wondered if I had crossed a line, if this approach was naive. But slowly, the tension evolved into conversation. The laughter that had been exclusive to Elliot began to return to our home, not because of coercion or manipulation, but because the stakes were suddenly clear. We were conscious of each other's needs, of each other's attention, and it wasn't a game anymore. It was negotiation and honesty. Looking back now, months later, I understand that discomfort wasn't the enemy. It was the signal. It was the mirror showing us where we had drifted apart, where assumptions had replaced attention. Introducing Serafina wasn't about creating drama. It was about illuminating truths that had been ignored. And in that illumination, we found the possibility of a reset, of rebuilding a connection that had felt eroded by silence, distraction, and unintentional neglect. It wasn't perfect. It never is. But the process taught me something crucial. Relationships require constant calibration, and sometimes the most uncomfortable actions reveal the deepest truths. I don't know how things will unfold with Jordan and me long term, but I know this. Ignoring subtle shifts in attention and care can quietly corrode even the strongest bonds. And sometimes, the mirror of discomfort is the only way to see clearly, to act decisively, and to reclaim the balance we thought we had lost forever.